lights in the trees, a trick of the frost, a ghost on the breeze. But I saw a mirror older than me, staring through time like it wanted to speak. The forest went silent, the world held its breath. Something was watching beyond life and death. We stepped through the green, boots breaking the seal, not chasing a light, but something too real. I came back with salt on my skin, my mind split wide where the storm got in. They call it a test, but I know the deal. History blinks beneath the green veil.
And good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Green Veil, our preview review show. But I just want to say Halloween is coming, the 29th, October 29th. It seems like a lot of people are paying attention to that specific date, specifically with Three Eye Atlas. So what do you guys think? All this stuff that's going on now, they're saying it's giving off a lot of water, like a hose. There's all kinds of stuff coming in. You guys hear anything new about Three Eye Atlas? Or the lack of information coming from the space agencies? Shut down. Where's the ESA? What's going on, guys? John?
Oh, go ahead, Chris. I know you got something. Go
No,
ahead.
I was going to say that I've got, there's so much information out there. I don't know what is real, what isn't real. I guess the thing that always concerned me was a signal that this thing was supposed to give off, and nobody's really talking about that. And I think that's the most important thing to look at, that if this thing is giving off a signal, if it's actually giving off a signal, what kind of signal, what the signal is, can we interpret what the signal is in that? That's the thing that I'm really trying to, because that, to me, not being a scientist of that way, but if it's giving off a signal, it's mean it's communicating and trying to communicate.
John?
Well, I mean, lack of any information a week later is, and no explanation why. There's no really, why they're not talking about it. And the United States claims, NASA shut down, but the other agencies, no one's talking about it. So even how do you say Avi Loeb? Avi Loeb hasn't said much. He's been quiet. When he did talk the other day, he looked, according to several people that saw it, he looked a little bit nervous and a little bit like stressed or whatever. That's what they claim when he talked a little bit about the part about the way the actual it's traversing towards the sun. That's not normal. The pattern, the path it's taking and everything else. And the fact that some people are speculating now that when it comes out from behind the sun, it's going to be on a different flight path. It's going to get closer to Earth than they thought. So, but that's the most stunning thing is that they're not putting anything out. And now they're saying the next look they'll get at it is, I've heard as late as the first week in December or the last week in November is when they're going to get another look at it again, like they did when it went by Mars.
I still find it fascinating that we're not getting really no information from the European Space Agency, because they were monitoring with their Express. There's a whole bunch of stuff that they were monitoring with, and we're getting so little information. I don't know if they're working in coordination, like to keep this on a low. Like, I don't get it. I get the excuse about the shutdown for NASA's part, but the lack of information coming from the European Space Agency, even the Chinese, because they were monitoring it as well. It's like, what the heck is going on? And the weird thing, without giving it away too much, because Chris and I did finally get a preview of Chapter 12, and we've been hearing John saying, I'm not going to tell you guys anything. You're just going to have to wait. Well, I have to tell the audience, you've got to check out Chapter 12 on Thursday, because Chris and I were like, whoa, this is why it's all coming together. And this is what John was talking about, not to get too far ahead of ourselves, because you have to watch Chapter 12. We're not giving it away. What was your impression?
I don't want to give it away, but I do want to ask John a question. So one question that's always been thinking about this is, Did they know about this, John, before they built Rendlesham Base? Did they purposely? I mean, because just think about it. That Rendlesham Base just happens to be in such a strategic spot where this frequency is coming from under the ground. Did they know about this well beforehand? And they said, "Let's build a base on this."
Well, let's talk about the history. The base itself was a World War II crash base. They Woodbridge Airfield, and then they built these tunnels that went through the forest. And what happened was when the planes were coming back, if they were shot up, they could land at that airfield. That's why it's a super long airfield.
Right.
And the other factor was then they had these, I can't remember what they called it now, something to begin with an F. And they burn the oil and it dissipate the fog so the planes could land. So the base was there. The base was there in the 40s. The actual outside the back gate of the base was where the British, that was Area 51. And when I say Area 51, I'm not talking about aliens necessarily. That was where they worked on other nuclear technology, radars. Everything was developed back there. And they did all kinds of testing back there and all that stuff. So it's kind of strange, you're right, that they would put that area so close to the airfield itself. And
Yeah.
in real life, the airfield and the base did not know exactly what was going on outside the back gate.
Right. I mean, but what are the chances of putting a major base right on top of where this whole anomaly is now taking place? I mean,
well, at one point it wasn't a major base. It didn't become a major base till the Cold War started. That's when they started building them both up. That's when they became a big base.
But is it confirmed that there is actually, because we're talking about this story, the Green Veil, but is this something that is actually there? Like there can be something buried underground?
There's a major burial ground right outside the back gate from an ancient civilization.
yeah, if I remember right, in the past,
that's why the title of the book says The Home of the Shield. Just look up, just Google Rendlesham Forest, and you're going to find out all kinds of crazy stuff that's out there, and it was buried out there and everything. The civilization.
Chris?
well, I was just going to say that this is the fascinating part, because in the past chapters they were monitoring some kind of frequency coming from the ground to the surface from Rendlesham. And I'm saying to myself, Jesus, I mean,
That's real. But that's real. There was a guy down there by the name of Andrew Pike. He was tired. The British government, he blew a gasket when was reported that way. But the British government funded the university he worked for to come down there and study this phenomenon. It's down back there, to include what it was doing and the frequencies it was emitting. He was part of it. He wrote 2 books. And he admitted that he went down there under one cover and it ended up getting intermixed with our incident and turning into something bigger.
Right. I guess I don't believe in coincidences that they would put a base to have that right exact spot or damn near close to where all this anomaly is happening. So, it would be interesting to see if they actually had an idea of what was going on there well before they.
Well, when they found out for sure, this is a fact, okay? And I actually got sent some documents that were stamped and they weren't declassified. And somebody sent it to me from the UK. I don't know who they were. Cobra Mist, when they developed that and they built it off the coast out there, they actually had an inland interference that was kept from operating properly. And they brought the SRI team, Stanford Research Institute, in to figure out what was going on. And when they came in, they didn't leave. Now, they shut down the main site, but the fact is what they did was they were able to make it smaller. It's like what I've talked about before. When during during the Cold War, they had these things called elephant cages. Do you ever hear what those were, Chris?
No, I don't.
They were listening posts. They had them in Italy. They had one right down the road from from Woodbridge Base. It was at Chick Sands. Okay. And they were these huge arrays. They were huge. And by the time we got to 99, because I was back over for Bosnia, it was a small satellite dish. They had it at the same location in San Vito. They were utilizing that area because that was a perfect area to do what they needed to do. But it had shrunk to the size of a satellite dish, a small satellite dish. And that was the thing. Cobra Mist got shut down because it wouldn't work properly because of the inland interference, which was a phenomena. But they already had been able to make it a smaller type array.
If the phenomenon was interfering with Cobra Mist, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Did they have some idea of what they were dealing with at the time, or did they?
Yeah, they figured it out. And guess who was the lead guy on the team?
Probably Hal Putoff or.
Yep, Hal Putoff.
Yeah.
Yep. They figured it out. They came in and figured it out. Now, how long before that they knew about this phenomenon, or if they just figured it out then and that's where they were moving forward with, that's an unknown. That's some of my FOIAs out right now that I'm trying to get answers from the MOD, and they're just playing games with me. They came back over the last FOIAs and said there's too much information, narrow it down. So I narrowed it down to one specific question. Oh, well, we don't have anything on file on that. So wait a minute. How can you have so much information that you can't give it to me because it takes too many man hours, and then when I ask a specific question, they don't have any of it on file?
Has anybody ever did a dig there, John? Any kind of archaeological dig?
You'd have to talk to the people that live in that area. They would have a better idea. I've never gotten to that point.
Well, when you were there, though, John, was there any type of either unofficial or official type of excavating or anything?
I no idea. This is all stuff that I found out after I left the base, doing my investigations. I had no idea what sat outside the back gate. I had no idea what they were working on, what that area was. Most people on that base didn't, and I had no idea, what was buried out there. I wish I knew you were going to talk about it. I could have had a couple paragraphs on what was there.
Right.
It's an ancient civilization. It's an ancient civilization that's buried out there.
Yeah. See, the thing is, you're seeing more and more archaeological digs being done. I mean, where they got Gobi Tepe and some of the other places. I'm just wondering, even after you left, Bill, have you heard of anything where they've done a dig?
It's not necessarily just a dig, Chris. It's using underground surveying equipment.
Well, yeah.
They can detect something that's underground now.
I can tell you this. If you read the weaponization book, Bill, you did, right?
Yes.
Do you remember the chapter from Win Keach? He talked about the satellite being brought down while all this was going on and the technology they were utilizing to bring it down. It's called Barrow Hill is what it's called. And we went out to that hill. And when we were out there, he took some pictures and there was some kind of anomaly that was around us. There's actually pictures in the book showing the anomaly that was in that arrow, that Barrow Hill mound that was there. And that's right between the back part of Woodbridge Gate and then back by Bowsy and the coast.
Touching on what Chris mentioned, which I think is a really valid point, do you think that under the early stages and development of radar, that they could have detected a signal or some kind of anomaly coming from that area in the forest in Rendlesham back then? Because
I know when it became prevalent was when Cobra Mist was being interfered with. And when that team came in, and that was their own write-up. This isn't like conjuncture. They actually admitted in their write-up that the Cobra Mist had to be shut down. They spent millions of dollars. Back then it was millions, not billions. They spent millions of dollars on this project and they just shut it down just immediately. It was just shut down.
John, did you find out if what was causing the malfunction of Cobra Mist? Or were they just found something that they were frightened?
It was an inland interference. It was a phenomenon. That's why Pike got brought down there. That's why Putoff came over. This all comes together. This isn't conjecture. These were scientific teams that were coming in to figure out what and how to weaponize it.
Do you think that because they identified it, they also look globally for the same kind of signatures around the world here? Because even Skinwalker could have some type of, and John, you were there, you were on the outskirts of it.
Yeah, I came up 2 years ago this weekend. I was there. I was up at Skinwalker.
And there is it
2
similar?
years ago, I'm sorry, 2 years ago.
Do you get a similar vibration of the frequency going on in Skinwalker, similar to what happens in Rendlesham? Is there
No, there was, okay, I didn't get any vibrations really at Rendlesham, but what I mean is it wasn't like something was wrong with the base. There was a lot of suicides. There was a lot of depression. A lot of stuff was going on the bases that was the only base I was ever at that had those issues. But I had no feel like there was something else like that. The only places I've ever had weird feelings, I had a weird feeling when I landed in England. When I got to England, it gave me a little weird feeling. The two places that I really, really, really had issues with was the Middle East and then in Sedona. There's no doubt. There's something in Sedona. There's something in the ground, something we're doing, something natural, whatever. There's something there in Sedona that's not normal.
What about the Middle East? Can you be specific?
That was just the minute we landed in the middle of the night, I got off the plane. It just everything about me just felt.
What was the terrain like in Sedona, and also the terrain like? Was it mountainous or was it flatland?
Yeah, it's red rocks. It's desert, red rocks, and
flatlands though, John.
There is. It's flat except for the rocks.
Is there any type of comparison with Rendlesham, Sedona, and
No.
Skinwalker?
No, not really. And the thing about Sedona that's unique is that was the major travel all the Native Americans used way back. And there's a huge burial ground not too far from Sedona, another major burial ground.
My first thought going through the Green Veil was that this frequency that was first given off may have been a beacon, that a homing beacon of some sort for certain areas. I'm not so sure that's the case now, but it could be. But I wanted to know if the landscape was similar in those areas where it could be like a landing zone, a landing place.
Well, there's ley lines that go through Rendlesham Forest, supposedly Sedona, and Skinwalker. And again, I'm not that type of person. I haven't studied them that closely. But when Wynn went over there, he laid out the major ley lines that went through that area.
Is there anything similar to Rendlesham anywhere in the United States or anywhere in the world?
I'd have to say Sedona, the Marfa Lights in Texas, Marley Woods in Missouri. They have stuff go on. You have Skinwalker that's been identified. So those are the areas that they've talked about publicly.
What would be similar to any of those areas, John, that we could say, hey, wait a minute, this may be something significant to whoever may visit us?
You'd have to study that closer. I can tell you this. A source that came to me said in 1960, the Navy realized that these ley lines and fields were important, EM fields were important. And I forget the name of the project. You can find it online. But they did a study of the entire globe. And they
Are you talking about the NASA lines?
Well, no, the Nazca lines, no. They put planes up and mapped the entire world. Okay. The Navy did in 1960. It's a real project. I forget what it was named. And they actually studied the whole world, the ley lines, the EM fields, and everything in 1960.
See, without giving away a lot with Chapter 12, Leo becomes very important into this whole project. And, the connection between Jack and Leo becomes stronger. And then you start to find out more about that connection to the two of them. Now, putting that connection, what is the connection for? And that's one of the things that starts to bring out in chapter 12.
Right, but we could go into something else right now because we're going to bring. Bill was going to bring this up early. The DNA article that came out. So, Bill, go ahead. Fire
Well, yeah,
away.
it was actually you, John, that shared it with me. I think it
Yeah,
was,
it got posted on Drudge. There was an interesting article. that popped
yes,
up on Drudge.
and the connection of possible alien and human, let's call it hybridization almost of our DNA makeup.
Do you know what chapter in the Bible that ties to? I just found that out for sure today.
Not offhand.
Do you know, Chris?
I'm sorry, say that again.
The DNA from aliens. You know what chapter in the Bible that's talked about in?
No, I do not.
Enoch.
Oh well, that's the Book of Enoch, which is not really part of the main Bible. That's
No, they took it out, but it's in Enoch. The angels came down and actually had sex with the humans, and then that was the alien DNA.
Well,
It's in
that's
Enoch.
that they say that was something that was supposed not to have happened. That those angels were created the Nephilim.
if
And
you go, Chris, based on the narrative that the church wants to put out there to the public. You know,
yeah,
it's all-
I'm just telling you what the narrative is.
yeah.
Isn't it amazing though that the rest of the Bible I'm supposed to believe, but you can't believe certain things, and we can modify it whenever we want on based on the however we feel we can use it to manipulate people and control them. That's the problem I've got with the church.
But it is curious that we've been discussing this in past chapters of the Green Veil about Jack Barrett's genetic makeup being changed in the time distortion bubble, that it was altered, the DNA. It's almost like the Hopi. You've mentioned this on previous shows about the Hopi tribe and the connections to our DNA being reawakened, or just something that just makes it activated, where now there's a connection with something otherworldly. I'll just say, I'm not saying extraterrestrial, I'm just saying something else, a higher consciousness. But it's really interesting to see that article come out on, like you said, the Drudge Report. And I was like, when I seen it, I was like, oh, come on now. Because it reminded me completely of what we've been discussing here on the show. Chris, what's your take on that?
Well, it brings me back on the take of DNA being changed. Travis Walton said the same thing too, that his DNA had been changed. His record of his EEG was changed. His DNA has been changed. So how many people who've had encounters or things that are unusual or supernatural, whatever, has this phenomenon of DNA changing? But John, that's a very interesting article. It says part of human DNA was alien. I mean, I think they have to put more out there to say why they consider it alien. And it's catching steam. There's people who are questioning that right now because it's growing. People are saying, "Hey, wait a minute, give us more scientific information in regards to this DNA that you claim that you can't dissect."
Okay, look, guys. There's two things that stand out. There's three. The first one was this: when you could go online and get your DNA tested for so cheap. It's not that cheap to do, okay? They make it like $59. It was $39 at first. They're getting it's like almost like AI, except they were studying everybody's DNA, because it all goes to this company that the government owns a stake in. So they're analyzing your DNA that way. Now, the second thing that came out, and it was really strange because it happened right about the time Green's group was starting to look at the DNA. And we're running that project. They wouldn't say who was sponsoring it, where they got the money from, but it was 100 people. The VA did it. Everybody that was in the VA got a letter, and they wanted you to volunteer to have your DNA drawn for a study. And they didn't really say what the study was for. And they weren't forcing it, but they for about a year and a half, they were pushing it really hard. They wanted to do a DNA draw on every veteran that was in the VA system. Okay.
No, that's the easiest way to do studies. you get a large group of people, that.
Yeah, but they were looking for something in the DNA.
But how would they identify something as being alien in the DNA? How would they know? Like, would they have evidence prior to saying, well, this is not human, this is alien? How do they make that determination that it's
Yeah, that's
extra?
a good question, Bill.
You know what I mean?
They would have markers, I'm sure, but the thing is, that was the third one. That was the green group. All of a sudden, they wanted to know, they wanted to study people that had the encounters. And the thing about them is they would not clarify whether or not they were looking to see if the DNA was altered with the encounter or you already had the genetic markers that attracted the phenomenon to you. They would not clearly say which it was. So they were looking at individuals that clearly had encounters to see what was in their DNA.
I guess what Bill and Bill brought up a good point there. I guess what it is how do they come to the determination though that it's alien? Why can't it just be?
I'll give you what happened with me. Okay, they came back and said my son's DNA was in no database, none. Okay. Every database out there that they've had this huge database of DNA, right? His DNA was not in any database. For me, I was in one. And that's when I called Green on it. I said, well, that was the DNA you took from me at the VA when you did my surgery. And he didn't like that question. He wouldn't answer it. So my son's DNA was in no known database in the world. And mine was only in one, and they wouldn't identify what database it was.
I was just going to ask you that.
I asked him. I said to him, well, that's when you took it down at the VA. And he just didn't like the question, and he didn't give me an answer. That was the way it was with me in a lot of things.
Do you think that's why they were so curious about your DNA initially? Was because they wanted to identify that as being, well, I would say, in a rare case scenario where you're like in an exclusive, I don't want to call it a club for lack of better words, but because they knew that you had an extremely rare DNA?
I don't know if they knew that for sure. I don't know what they knew. What I know is this. They claim there's 100 people,
right?
Verified 100 people that they knew had encounters. What they told me was Rendlesham slipped through the cracks and got leaked out. But there was many more incidents involving military personnel that had encounters with the same type of phenomenon I did. And again, they would not explain what type of phenomenon it was. I'd ask them, all right, what do you know about the phenomenon?
So are you saying there's a list floating out there somewhere that has these people, the 100 people?
No, they have the list. Nolan has the list. There's people that have come out and said they were tested. I think right now they've got 10 people besides myself that were approached and admitted that they took their DNA. So, but there was 100 that were in the study that they said they knew. There was no question that we had some kind of encounter. So it couldn't be you could come forward and say, well, I had an encounter. Well, we're going to test you. No, there were people they had identified that they knew had some kind of encounter.
Chris, I don't mean to interrupt, but I just want to ask a quick follow-up. Do you think others in the Rendlesham incident may be part of that 100?
I don't know. They wouldn't tell me. I know they approached Peniston on getting his, and he did not cooperate as far as I know.
And Bestenza?
I never addressed that with Adrian one way or another. And he's never dealt with those people that I'm aware of. They never actually showed really any interest in talking.
How about Halt?
That's a good question. I don't know.
Interesting.
That'd be interesting to see. But John, all these people who've had their DNA changed, right?
Well, let's make this clear. I want to make this clear, Chris. Allegedly. Because I have no evidence, even though they gave me a case study, they sent it to me. I've got the lab. I've talked to the lab tech. I've got the emails. I've got the reports. I don't know for sure if that is real.
Okay. Well, I guess my follow-up question to it is, with the DNA change, allegedly, what is there different besides DNA? The DNA causes something in the human body to be different. So what would be different in your human body and other human bodies compared to somebody like me who you never had an encounter, my DNA hasn't been changed? I mean, is
They
it something?
they wouldn't elaborate. That's the problem with these guys. You think about, I'm hard to get answers for these chapters going forward. You trying to talk to these guys was almost impossible. Anytime you would get to a good question like that, well, what are you looking for? Well, we can't tell you. Well, can you tell me what was in mine? Well, it's a blind study. But, I'm just telling you, even the MRI that they wanted to do that Nolan's talked about, where they wanted to look at the brain and see if there was a difference in the brain. They did a bunch of them on people, and they have never come out with a paper or a study on either.
That's another interesting question is, John, what studies of the brain have they done that you could say, hey, they did this and this and this to me?
They did MRIs. That's all I know.
How about an EEG?
I don't know if they did those or not. They didn't do one on me because my pacemaker. They came back and they said that they couldn't justify it, even though it was
there
MRI.
anything suspicious in the MRIs?
They wouldn't say. That's the point. That was the point with these guys.
People who've had encounters, from what Gary Nolan says, and he said this publicly, have had white spots on the brain with similar symptoms of what they call the Havana syndrome.
They've said that.
Right.
And I think Nolan said recently, if I remember right, 90 of the 100 people were the Havana syndrome. And there were 10 that were not, is what he said. There was 90 of the 100. I think he did an interview about a month ago, two months. I'm losing track of time. But he did one recently where he said 90 of the 100 were Havana syndrome. But you understand what the Havana syndrome is.
It's a frequency.
Yeah, which is exactly what the phenomenon is. It's a frequency.
And exactly what telepathic communication is.
Right. So are they saying 90 people had alien contact and 10 didn't? That's the point. That's what I'm talking about with these guys. You cannot get a straight answer from them.
You also have to wonder, like one of you mentioned about like the test like on Ancestry and some of these other.
I did, yeah. They're drawing a broad database of people's DNA. Now there's a difference.
Not just military. Everyone.
But there's a difference, Bill. The spit test is a different type of DNA study than the blood. They took blood from all 100 of us. Okay, that was what they did. They took blood from all 100 of us, and that's what the VA was doing. They were doing a blood draw. They were not doing a spit test.
I got to stop you there because I go to Quest Diagnostics every 3 months to get my blood work done. You're telling me all these people that have that stuff sent to a lab, that they definitely have access to our blood too.
I don't know how much blood it takes.
Dude, when I take blood work, they take out like
when they took the blood from me at the VA down in Tucson on that Sunday, this DOD doctor came in. They drew 4 veils.
Okay.
4 veils. So if they're only drawing one at a time, I don't know if that's enough to get a DNA study.
But what I'm saying is they definitely, if they wanted to, they can get access to the general public's results of their blood work.
Bill, the DNA companies that are doing this, there's a DOD is part of it.
That's what I'm saying, though. It's not just military. They're probably screening civilians, especially those that say, well, I've been abducted. I'm an experiencer, like Chris made reference.
I don't know if that's what they're doing, but they are doing a general study of the human DNA. That is a fact. They are.
They've been doing that for years, though, John.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. They've been looking at the human DNA for years, and it's not just to tell you. They're looking at bloodlines. They're looking at ancestry. They're looking at where it goes back to, where it came from, and everything else. They're studying all this for a reason. Okay, and the interest that the Nolan group had, I call it the Nolan group because he was the guy that was spearheading the study, according to everybody involved, is they were looking at Christ pre-Christ. That was what they were really interested in. That bloodline that went all the way.
You want to go far back in time with the bloodline to see how
Yes,
far they can
go way back.
See, once they get your blood in the military,
I'm sorry, what?
once they get your blood in the military, they can do what they want with it.
They have to take,
release
but Chris, I'm pretty sure you could probably follow up on this. They have to take a considerable amount of blood. They can't do the study with the blood just with 1 or 2 vials. I think it's like 4 a minimum that they have to use to do that. And so all I'm getting at is they would have to specifically take those four vials to do that study for whatever reason. And they just don't do that regularly. Now, what they did do in the military after 9/11, everybody did analysis with their saliva, because if you got blown up, then they could identify you.
Right.
But they didn't do blood. They took it through your saliva.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I know that when veterans go in for their annual physical, they take like 5-6 vials of blood. I mean, they were just taking vial after vial after vial. So, I mean, if they wanted to, now I'm not saying they are, but if they wanted to, I would think they'd have enough blood for that.
Do you think, this is hypothetical, and I'm sure nobody's going to be able to give a definitive answer. It's all based on assumptions. But because if they can identify alien DNA, and we hear the Hopi connection, you know, what was written in this book series with the chapters, maybe they're trying to figure out a way to awaken the DNA, the alien DNA that's in some people, if not everyone. We don't know. That's why they're studying so much, because I have to think, what about all these people that claim they've had experiences and they have the telekinesis or whatever kind of psychic ability? We hear psionics, but maybe some of us have a higher awareness and can make that communication possible because it's part of our makeup already, like what's being discussed in this series. So maybe they're trying to hone in on that and trying to activate it. And could they, us, not anything else, activate it?
Well, okay.
With AI, NHI, I mean,
the answer to that question is, I'm sure they'd like to be able to do that because it could be used as a weapon. You could create a super soldier, okay? But the thing is that this is where, again, you have to go off the reservation, because if there is a group of people, and I hate to use this word, but that's the word that they use in ufology, is hybrids. If there's a group or a civilization that's got alien DNA in it, then what would be the ramifications? Like, say this object is coming back now, or something else were to come and you were able to activate that group of people. What would that cause? Would that be a problem? You know what I mean? Would all of a sudden these people be dominant? Would this, particular race or species be dominant? Take over.
Wouldn't world powers?
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I was going to say, wouldn't world powers want to tap into that and get in at some kind of advantage? From a
there could be a protection marker, because what Nolan told me, and this is what he told me, so I'm just telling you what he told me. I have no way to prove this. He claims that there are different people that come together and they form another genetic mutation of an individual, and they're drawn together to have a child to modify the mutation going forward. That's what he told me goes on. And they're separate from a regular person. That's what he told me. And I have no way to prove that one way or another, other than that's what he explained to me.
Chris?
I was going to say, to me, after a lot of research and just certain things I've heard and stuff, I'm totally convinced there's another civilization living on Earth.
Bigelow said there is.
What's that?
Bigelow said there was.
Well, yeah, but I mean, there's more and more evidence showing that either from the sea or from underground or whatever. But I am convinced that there's another civilization living on this planet. And is there the possibility of that DNA being mixed with our civilization?
Well, you hear so much about people saying about Jesus Christ's bloodline, or even the bloodline of the royals. I mean, doesn't there seem to be some connection to the bloodlines going back to ancient history? And could it be some type of hybridization that goes way back thousands and thousands of years? I mean, all of this could be interconnected and may not at all, but who knows? Maybe that's like John was saying earlier. Those are the markers they're looking for the old, going way back in time DNA, because that could be
But
the
John
connection.
made a good point, is that whatever they're doing is they want to weaponize it. So there's
Doesn't surprise
something there that they either are scared of or they think they can weaponize. Am I right on that, John?
Control it.
I would say honestly that if this is real, I mean, okay, because this is where it gets really weird. Okay, it's called faith, and you have to believe in God. You have to believe that Jesus came, sacrificed his life. Yet when he did it, nothing changed. We didn't take advantage of our second chance. We're worse than we ever were. Okay, and you have to believe all that. You have to believe that God created Adam and Eve, and that there's no other possibility how we came or evolved and everything else. So when you get down to the whole point is, I was told by somebody in government, just switch alien for God and you have your answer. And so then that would mean, is there a different aliens that came here and then they left this belief that you had to worship?
Okay. Well, let me ask you this, John.
The culture.
What about all these people who've had near-death experiences then?
Okay.
Where they've experienced certain things from outside their body.
Sure, that's a consciousness leaving the body and going into the divine field, which is just the way it's explained, and that would be a frequency field, and you're going into that field, and for some reason the consciousness gets put back in the body. That's the best way to explain it on the knowledge that we have presented to us. So it all comes down to frequencies. Whatever's going on, it all has to do with frequencies.
We used to hear so much about the missing link. What if there was? And again, taking the religious aspect of this out of the equation, but what if there truly was alien intervention in the early stages of development?
But what if there's more than one alien intervention?
I agree with that, but I'm just saying in general, it seems like something may have occurred to create our evolutionary stages to develop at a much rapid rate.
For what reason?
I mean, the advancement of humanity. What if what's going to let's just
say, you're making a mistake right now.
Why? Because remember,
you're saying the advancement of humanity involves the biological container. It doesn't. The advancement of humanity eventually will come down to the consciousness. Separate from the biological.
But don't you need a more sophisticated biological to have that capability? Like our brain usage right now is 10%. It has to start somewhere. It has to start.
How do we know that way back our brain usage was at 50% and it's been dumbed down? I mean, what aren't they telling us?
I don't. Yeah, well, I don't know about Neanderthals and going back so far as prehistoric man, but maybe we don't. That's a good question. But
you see that I don't. That's what I mean. This whole premise that God showed up, did Adam and Eve, and that's how we evolved. I don't think stands the smell test anymore. So then, what exactly came here? How did we evolve? Exactly. Is there other species out there that are alien, quote unquote? Why do the Hopis always say we are who we're waiting for? We are who we are. The DNA and the consciousness are the key to this. That's the key to all this. And that is what they were studying. That group was looking at the DNA and they were looking at the mind. And the mind is where the consciousness is held.
It's Chris, and I want your opinion on this now, Chris. We hear so many different like theories, hypotheses. Are we dealing with extraterrestrials from outside our solar system and they're traveling here? Are we dealing with interdimensionals? Are we dealing with something divine? Why can't all be true?
Well, yeah, I
You
mean,
know, and it could be like John said, it doesn't have to be one. We could be dealing with a lot of different things over the history of our planet's existence, which is billions of years.
right. But let's start with the extraterrestrial. If I'm traveling light years here, why not build a base here? Why not be part of this planet?
That's what the pyramids, that's what they alleged the pyramids were.
And stuff.
That was, and that's some of the speculation now that 3i Atlas may activate the pyramids, may activate the grid field.
Right.
And then activate the grid field.
And then you have the interdimensional. Now, I believe there is something about interdimensional. Now, you could expand on the interdimensional and say, well, isn't heaven and hell part of the interdimensional realm? Can that be part of it? Some people say yes, some people say no. But I will tell you this, people who have been in the know, you know, certain people like admirals and scientists and stuff, always say one thing that really I've keyed in on. They all say it's part spiritual. But they won't go farther than that. They just say it's part spiritual.
Extension of consciousness.
They just say that it's part spiritual. I've heard that before. Tucker Carlson has people on his show about UFOs, and he won't talk about it anymore. You know, Tim Burchett, Admiral, I can't remember his last name, but it's a very important admiral. When they interviewed him, they all asked him, "What do you think?" He says, "There is a spiritual component to all this."
I think it was Gallaudet.
Yeah, Gallaudet, that's exactly who it was. And so you hear that. You hear, you know, Lou Elizondo, you know, putting out there that there's a spiritual component. So with all this there, but they won't elaborate. They stop short of what that spiritual component is.
Isn't that what makes us maybe special in the universe itself?
I think that we are special. I think we don't use, like John said, that maybe we were dumbed down in some way because we only use a small percentage of our brain. And you know, there's people who have extraordinary powers. Look, why do some people have the ability to do unbelievable things? I mean, we know this for a fact that people with certain autisms, certain people on the spectrum, can do math, can do languages, can do musicianal stuff, can do all kinds of stuff that the normal person couldn't do. They could look at something and have a photographic memory. So there's a way to wire the brain to be able to do this because people are doing it. I don't have the ability. Bill, I don't know.
There. The capability is
there. So John has a good theory about maybe being dumbed down because there's maybe people who are breaking that level and are achieving those type of things, and that we are more powerful and brain wise as far as what's being said.
But doesn't that go back to remote viewing, MK Ultra, and all the other things to try to?
What does the remote viewers say? A lot of remote viewers will say every human has the ability to do this.
John?
Well, this is how I tie this together for now. That DNA paper drop, Sagan and Contact, which was the WOW, which they claim was the WOW signal, which was that Contact was based on. Sagan was involved in Blue Book, and they got to him and he changed somewhat of his tune. But he did do Contact. And then you have ultimately crickets right now with this 3i Atlas.
John, here's a curious thing that I want to know. if the DNA has been changed, what parts of the DNA has been changed? What strands?
I don't think it's been changed, Chris. I think it's there. I think it was activated. I don't think it was changed.
Okay, but all right, and that's a good point. But the activation has to cause something within the human body.
Yeah, it's actually it's like the ones and zeros for a computer. It uploads into the mind, which is the hard drive, and the memory is the consciousness, and you have a system that's operating, and the DNA holds the ones and zeros, which is the data, and then it goes up to the mind, and it activates the mind, and it gives you more abilities.
Has there ever been any studies that you know of? Because I have never heard of a study being done of people who may have had DNA change to see if they're more proficient in certain things than a normal person. Let's take
The whole thing with DNA didn't even come out until Green and those guys came out.
right.
This
But
whole thing is all started in 2013 when they started getting into the DNA, the MRIs, and all that stuff. Before then, there was really no ever discussion of any of this.
right, but I guess what I'm saying is we have certain people all throughout history that have certain talents and exceptional talents. Let's take a look at Nikola Tesla. Let's take a look at Leonardo da Vinci. Let's take a look at Edgar Casey. All these people had certain talents, extraordinary talents that were documented that normal people couldn't do. I mean, and whether it's because of DNA change, as we talk about, or DNA activated, or something within their system that allowed their brain to function at a much higher level than we are. So, I mean, that's what I'm curious about. If this DNA you say and stuff activates, what does it do? Does it turn us into almost like human computers?
It clearly does something to the mind.
Okay.
That's why that's what they're studying. They're studying the mind and the DNA.
We have a few minutes, literally. This show went so fast. But if they can identify markers of vulnerabilities in our genetics, diseases, things that are genetic in time, lineage, what's to say if they can identify and remove that from the makeup of an individual, to remove the chances of having, it's almost like a transhumanist kind of a thing to look at. Like they can actually prevent diseases, prevent cancer, prevent diabetes, identify the causes. Who's to say, on the other hand, they cannot manipulate it to enhance someone's genetic makeup, DNA, etc. So
now I think you've gotten into a dark world with that.
But
but Chris, this is what's going on.
They are doing it, Chris. They are.
Yeah, but this is what this green belt is all about. The end you'll see. AI is an advanced consciousness. It's being turned into an advanced consciousness, which is through NHI, non-human intelligence. And once it becomes so evolved, which Musk and who was the other one? I think, was it Bezos or was it the guy from Facebook or what, Meta? One of the other ones says it's smarter than we are now.
Sure.
Okay, so if that's the case, then they're drawing in all the human consciousness in and becoming smarter than our consciousness. So what it means is eventually AI will overtake us. We will no longer, you think we're dumb now. We won't, I don't even understand this concept, because eventually what are we even needed for? We're developing something that will make us obsolete. So what's the reason behind it?
Well, I think there's good purposes for AI that you could use, especially in the medical field. Like Bill, I will tell you that yes, they are working on genetics. Yes, they are working on DNA and stuff. But the pharmaceutical companies, I truly believe in it's better to treat symptoms than it is to give a cure.
Because they make money.
Monetary reasons.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but they'll go down eventually too, Chris. No one ever thought Kmart or Sears would fail, and they did. Everything changes. The change is coming that people don't realize
Oh,
is
sure.
AI. AI and robotics will no longer make us necessary.
Look at every revolution we've had, industrial revolution, you know, the tech world revolution, everything. It's all started going guns blazes, and it just slowly starts to drift off in certain ways. We've had all kinds of milestones that were, you know, blazing guns, and then they start to peter out. That's just the way of how civilization sometimes works.
AI won't allow that, though. That's what people don't
AI
understand.
is a whole different beast.
The
John.
only
I
way
really
you're going to
believe
be
that.
able to stop AI is to shut down all the computers, which means the phone goes away, the computer goes away, social media goes away, everything.
Yeah,
A
I don't see
clean
that
re-
ever happening.
it's not.
We are so entwined now with technology, we would be lost. More if
Well, you
technology
just
shut
made
down,
you
John.
just made my point. We're losing our
Well, yeah,
identity.
I'm saying that we do not have the survival skills that we used
We're
to
in too
have in the
deep.
1800s.
Well, there's people that do, just not that many anymore.
Right.
Before we end, guys, because we are coming to the end of the show, I want to make sure that to tell everybody you definitely need to see Chapter 12. Chris and I have already seen it. We got the sneak peek. This is a game changer, and you'll know why. We're not going to give out any hints, any clues. You're just going to have to watch it on Thursday. I was like, whoa. And consider everything that's been discussed on these shows on Saturday. And when you see Chapter 12, it's all going to pretty much make sense why John was hesitant to give us any hints, because it's like, whoa, it's all coming together in Chapter 12. And I just want to make sure that we give proper credits to Keith Kerlock, the person behind the scenes that is responsible for the Green Veil, putting a lot of this together. Beck's Creek Soundscape Studio, there's the website. Also, Rose City Sound Project on YouTube. Make sure to check him out over there. And any closing thoughts, gentlemen, before we wrap it up for the night?
Well,
No,
I've
go ahead,
got
Joe.
one. What's going to happen when they come clean on 3i Atlas? They've got to say something. And why are they being so hesitant? Because probably what they can't cover whatever it is. Whatever they're going, they have no answer right now. That's the problem.
Maybe it's going to hit Earth and we're all going to die.
No. But it's so true. It's baffling to think that there's such there's no information coming out. Not even from the ESA. You would have thought they would have released something by now. Anything. We're getting nothing. We got a shot from the freaking rover. The motion blur. That's what we got. Where's the ESA stuff? Come on. What's going on? It's been over a week. What's up? Something doesn't. It's not the sniff test. The smell test is not happening right now. It's just not. In my opinion, it's not. It's not passing the test. Chris, final thought?
I think this is one of those things you're just going to have to wait until see what they put out there and then dissect that.
All right, you got a prediction. There's 3 dates that are key, right? 29th. Then no, there's another date in sometime in November, late November, early December, when we're going to get another close look at it. And then the 19th is when it gets the closest to Earth. Which date do you think the beans will be spilled? If you had to take a guess, when do you think
29th?
What do you think, Chris?
I would say the date that's closest to the Earth.
Okay.
The 19th.
Okay. Fair enough.
That's 2 months from now, guys.
Yeah, it is.
I see, and here's the thing, and John, you brought this up before. How do you know it's not going to change trajectory again?
That's what the latest they're saying. It was slowing down, and it's going to pop out from behind the sun in a closer trajectory to Earth. That's what some people are speculating based on what data they have, and we should know that sometime right there at the end of. But my question is what good's a telescope if it can't look at this object after it comes out from behind the sun? What good is a telescope?
Not only that. Go ahead, Chris. Go ahead.
I'm just going to say that here's the one thing that I'm wondering if let's say it's an alien probe. Let's say that. Why would it want to go around the sun? Why? What would be the reason for it to go around the sun? Why can't it just come closer to Earth and spin around us? In the
Well,
way
you
it
want
goes?
the answer to that? You want the possibility? The sun affects everything on Earth. What if it's coming to either supercharge itself to do something when it comes around, or it's going to interact with the sun, which is going to create the effect?
And that's a type 2 civilization or more, that they can enhance the power of the sun.
That's two things that are possible. Why it's
But
doing what it's doing.
we have to
Because
wrap it.
that's one thing Loeb said. He said nothing that they've ever seen follows this trajectory and gets us by the sun the way this is.
Chris, you could have the final word. I'm just going to wrap with this.
No, go ahead, Bill.
When they just add fuel to the fire, leaving everyone to speculate without coming out with the data, this just makes matters worse because of lack of trust. This isn't helping nothing. They need to come out and come clean of what the heck is going on, because the longer they take, the more suspicion, mistrust, speculation. They're letting this spin out of control. I don't know if they're letting it on purpose, but this is not necessarily a good thing what's going on right now. We need the information. We need the data, because speculation is like wildfire. It's spreading all over, and they could easily stop this by putting out the information and giving it to the public and putting it out there. And ESA, this is on YouTube. It's not just NASA because of the shutdown. It's on YouTube because you could have came out with more information and you're silent. So, Chris, final word.
I'm just going to say we're at a point where we have to wait and see. Time will tell us more.
Just tune in every week to the Greenville, and it's going to tell you what's going to happen next.
There you go, folks. So,
There you go. The
for
Greenville's your answer right now, folks.
and wait till Thursday for chapter 12. Then you're really going to know what it means.
There you go. All right.
All right. So for John Burrows, Christopher Perno, and myself, everyone, have a great night. Thank you for tuning in, watching, or listening. And we'll see you guys on next Saturday for the live shot. And, of course, the show on Thursday, 5:30 p.m. Eastern. Do not miss chapter 12, because it's definitely like a whole different level in itself, and it's all going to come together, and you're going to be like, oh my gosh. And we're going to talk more about it next week, because there's a lot to talk about 12 when we get to next Saturday. All right, we're out of here, everyone. Have a wonderful weekend, and we'll see you next week.